1v1 is one of the most interesting alternate ways to play competitive Pokemon that completely turns all of the fundamental rules upside down. 1v1 is a very simple format, and a great one to pick up and play casually. In 1v1, you can bring 3 Pokemon to a game and just pick one of them to do battle. That singular Pokemon you choose will face against whatever singular Pokemon your opponent chooses. So this is kind of like rock, paper, scissors. You have 3 options, they have 3 options, and you have to guess what they do and try to win. But it's more complicated than rock, paper, scissors, obviously, because instead of simple options that directly beat other things, you have Pokemon, which have all kinds of varying different matchups, different movesets they could possibly have. Some are even designed to bait Pokemon into thinking they can win, but surprising them with options like Choice Scarf or specific EV spreads to live enemy hits. 1v1 sets get insane, and you see options used in this format that are never used in conventional play. This is a totally different environment because switching is not a thing. You can't switch out of a Pokemon if you only have one Pokemon. For that reason, moves like stat debuffs are much more common here. The move Encore is incredibly powerful because you can't just switch out to get rid of the effect. Encore just traps you completely. Items like the Key Berry are very popular. The Key Berry is an item sometimes seen in competitive singles that grants you a defense boost on hit, but this is much better in 1v1 where you don't have to worry about losing that defense boost if you switch out. Even moves like Hyper Beam are good here because if Hyper Beam one-hit KOs them, you just win. Yes, Hyper Beam has to charge, but what if you just won the game already? That doesn't matter. So 1v1 has totally different things to consider when building teams and devising strategies. And you will often see Pokemon that are completely useless in conventional competitive play thrive in the 1v1 environment in a way they never could elsewhere. One strong example of this is the fact that Cresselia is the #1 ranked Pokemon in Generation 8 1v1. Now, Cresselia is not a completely terrible Pokemon, of course. In doubles, it's a fantastic choice, but in singles 6v6, this is a Pokemon with a lot of struggles. A mono-psychic typing is not great, as you're weak to the common Dark, Ghost, and Bug, and Cresselia tends to be too passive and difficult to use. But in 1v1, I'm sure you can imagine why this is such a good Pokemon. This is a Pokemon made for the 1v1 environment. Cresselia has fantastic defensive stats and fantastic defensive boosting moves. Cresselia can use the Key Berry I mentioned earlier to get a defense boost just by getting hit, and straightforwardly spam Calm Mind and win 1v1 against most Pokemon in the whole game. It's difficult to beat this Cresselia that you can't force out with Roar or Whirlwind or anything like that, even if you can threaten it super effectively. Sometimes that's not enough. This is a perfect example of how strong defensive boost and even temporary boost effects that are less impactful in singles like the Key Berry are so good in 1v1. Cresselia also has access to Trick, which is a fantastic option with the Choice Scarf. You can imagine that Trick Choice Scarf is a crazy combo in 1v1. Trick is a move that switches your item with the enemy's item, and it's commonly used in competitive to give a defensive Pokemon or a utility Pokemon a choice item, thus leaving them completely useless because they can't use all of their moves anymore. In 1v1, this is amplified significantly because there's only one Pokemon on the field. So if you trick a Choice Scarf onto them, that can just win the game completely. Cresselia is fantastic at tricking a Choice Scarf onto something and then just healing back up, boosting for a million years, and 1v1ing the guy easily. In Generation 9, the best Pokemon in the whole game in 1v1 is Iron Crown. Now, this is not a terrible Pokemon or anything. It's used in competitive, but this being ranked #1 in the whole game is quite a significant difference to its status in normal 6v6 singles, where it's good, but not that good. This Pokemon has so many powerful tools for the 1v1 environment. It has access to both Iron Defense and Calm Mind. Iron Defense boosts your defense by 2, Calm Mind boosts your special attack and special defense. Iron Crown is also pretty fast compared to a lot of Pokemon with access to these defensive options, so it can use a strong defensive boost in advance, take a hit, and then activate its Weakness Policy item. Weakness Policy is an item that gets consumed after you're hit by a super effective attack, and upon being consumed, it raises your attack and special attack by 2 stages each. This item is sometimes used in regular competitive singles, but you can clearly imagine why this is so much better in the 1v1 environment, because these boosts don't go away. Boosts are much better here. Iron Crown also has access to stored power, which gains 20 power for every single boost you have, and you're getting boosts from every angle. Iron Defense, Carmine, and Weakness Policy provide boosts to almost all of your stats that you have. It's ramping up the power of stored power, often in just a single turn of taking a hit. Iron Crown has an incredible combination of firepower and the bulk and defensive boost to take an incoming hit, activating this Weakness Policy and going to the moon with stored power boosts. Hisuian Goodra was an underwhelming Pokemon in regular competitive singles. Despite looking quite good, it has fantastic defensive stats, a great defensive typing, an interesting assortment of abilities, and a pretty wide attacking move pool. Unfortunately, this Pokemon struggled to get much done in Gen 9 OU, as it was outclassed by other similar defensive Pokemon with better options like pivoting moves, progress making, and hazards. Its utility move pool is lacking a bit. But in 1v1, this is yet another perfect Pokemon. Who needs hazards or pivoting in 1v1? It's a world where switching doesn't exist. It's me versus you. On the battlefield, it's all about combat. It's all about what actually matters. And Hisuian Goodra has incredible defensive strengths and a wide attacking move pool to hit various different things. That's a recipe for success in the 1v1 format. This is an example of a very cool 1v1 set on Hisuian Goodra, using the move Acid Spray. Yet another move that's sometimes seen in more mainstream formats but is amplified in 1v1. It's a 40 power poison type special attack that lowers the enemy's special defense by 2. Since the enemy can't switch out, that special defense debuff is much more valuable here. Hisuian Goodra aims to use this on the first turn, and then click Endure to survive on 1 HP. Now that it's on 1 HP, it will activate the Kustap Berry, allowing it to move first and finish off the opponent with a powerful special attack, probably Draco Meteor. Since the enemy has lowered their special defense, this is a high chance to get a KO. And Hisuian Goodra has such good bulk that it can survive a one-hit KO from most things in the whole game, get that Acid Spray through for the follow-up combo. This is an example of a set you would never really see in other formats. Another cool option on Hisuian Goodra is a Choice Band. Isn't that fun? Hisuian Goodra has a respectable 100 attack and a pretty nice assortment of physical attacks that hit all sorts of common Pokemon. Heavy Slam hits all the fairy types you see often. Skitter Smack is a move I've never even heard of, to be honest, but in 1v1 it's good. It's a 70 power bug type attack that has a 100% chance to lower special attack by 1. This is not only bug coverage, it lets you 1v1 special attackers trying to ramp up with Carmine boosts. This is actually pretty good against Iron Crown because it doesn't activate the Weakness Policy and they can't ramp up enough with Carmine to keep up with your damage, so this will beat that. And other similar Pokemon trying to ramp up with Carmine. But we can do better than this, folks. What about something really obscure, something really wacky, that's not good at all in conventional competitive formats but thrives in 1v1? What about Aromatisse? Do you even know this Pokemon? It's unlikely that you know it. It's a mono fairy type that is outclassed by so many other fairy types. Clefable being the main one. Sylveon is more exciting. There are so many mono fairy type utility Pokemon that just do what Aromatisse does but better. However, in 1v1, Aromatisse stands out with its access to the ability Aroma Veil. Usually not a fantastic ability, but in 1v1 this ability is very useful. Aroma Veil makes it so that you are immune to effects that disrupt your ability to use moves, like Encore or Taunt, moves that force you into a particular action. Being immune to Encore and Taunt is massive in 1v1. These moves are everywhere, and they are commonly used to trap the enemy into a sequence that results in their demise. Not only does Aromatisse have complete immunity to some of the most common effects in 1v1 like that, it also has this unique combination of moves. Trick Room, Encore, and Disable, which might not sound that exciting, but ponder this for a moment. You can start off with Trick Room to make it so you are moving faster than your opponent. And now the world is your oyster. You can either click Encore or Disable from there. Disable will prevent them from using the last move that they used for 4 turns. Yet another example of a move that's much better in 1v1. If you are up against a choice-locked Pokemon, this will ruin their career and force them to just struggle as they slowly perish. This is also useful if the enemy used an attack so strong that it would KO you the next turn. Encore is also able to force them to repeat the last move they used for 3 turns, very useful against enemies using boosting moves or weak attacks that aren't that threatening. And the combination of Disable and Encore together is also powerful. If they are locked into a move and you disable it, now they have to struggle because they are forced to use a move they can't use because of Disable. Every time they use Struggle, they will lose 25% of their HP, and since it's a physical attack, they will make contact with you and proc this Rocky Helmet, slowly dying to all the chip damage and you clicking Moonblast for a bit of damage on top. This is actually a high-ranked 1v1 Pokemon, and a Pokemon that is at its absolute best in this format. In most other contexts, it's outclassed by fellow support fairy types, but not in 1v1. This ability, Aromatisse, and this moveset are fantastic here. Another Pokemon that sucks everywhere else, but is great in 1v1. Aggron, a Gen 3 classic. This Steel Rock type struggles in most competitive formats. Its typing is leaving it ×4 weak to fighting and ground, which is a death sentence, as those are some of the most common types in the game. But this is 1v1, where making a defensive switch is not necessary, because switching is not a concept. So Aggron's struggle to hit the field safely doesn't matter here. Aggron's lack of longevity also doesn't matter here. Longevity is not important. Defeating the enemy as quickly as possible is more important. Aggron has very good base stats. 180 base defense is through the roof, 110 attack is serviceable, and the ability Sturdy is also extremely powerful in 1v1. Sturdy has the same effect as the Focus Sash item, allowing you to live on 1 HP if you are hit with lethal force from full HP. If you would have died, you survive instead. How good is that in 1v1? The enemy's trying to defeat you and you can just defeat them instead. And guess what else you have? Metal Burst is an effect similar to Counter and Mirror Coat. It reflects back damage. It reflects back a little bit less damage than they do, only 1.5x of damage taken, but Metal Burst works against any kind of attack, not just physical or special. Metal Burst reflects back any kind of incoming damage from an attack, which is absolutely massive. You survive any attack and reflect it back. Aggron also has the very high power attack Head Smash, which usually suffers from its immense drawback of dealing half of the damage dealt in recoil. That is way too much damage to be taking, but this is 1v1, and short-term value is greatly enhanced. There's also an order of operations to consider here. If you KO the enemy with Head Smash and then you die from the recoil, you still win because you KO'd them first. The recoil happens after damage is dealt. So Head Smash dealing damage to yourself doesn't matter because Head Smash will often be the move that KOs them. And if you KO them, you win. So this is just a really high power attack that does massive damage to many different things. It can also be used after being brought down to 1 HP with Sturdy and activated with a Kustap Berry. You could start off with Metal Burst or Heavy Slam to chip them down and then Head Smash for the final blow. Speaking of Heavy Slam, that's another great option with stab damage that deals weight-based damage. Pretty excellent steel type attack. Let's go Aggron, finally a format where you can thrive. Ladies and gentlemen, behold my favorite 1v1 set of all time that I used back in Gen 7. A masterpiece of a set on the Pokemon Komala, a ZU ranked Pokemon that isn't very good, but it has something to do in 1v1, something funny to do. Komala is a Pokemon that is sleeping at all times. It has the ability Comatose, which treats it as if it is asleep in all contexts. It is completely immune to status as a result, and it can use Sleep Talk even if it is not put to sleep by an enemy or, using rest or anything like that. And this has an interesting application because you can use Sleep Talk to call the move Last Resort. Last Resort is an incredibly powerful normal type attack with 140 power that is actually kind of hard to use. To be able to use Last Resort, you have to use all of your other moves that you know first. And you cannot just have Last Resort as the only move you know. That won't work. You have to use at least one other move first, and then use Last Resort. But with this clever move set, using Sleep Talk will randomly use another move you know. Guess what? You only know one other move, Last Resort. And since you've just used Sleep Talk, you have met the conditions for Last Resort to be usable. You have used your only other move, and in a single turn, you are able to hit the enemy with a massive 140 power attack. And Komala has a pretty good attack stat of 115. As an Australian, I'm very proud to see our nation's representative in the Pokemon universe be viable somewhere. Even though this is a bit of a niche comedy set, it's better than you would think. It's actually somewhat viable in Gen 7 1v1, which is more than can be said for some non-koalas. Another example of a cool Pokemon that can work in 1v1 but struggles elsewhere is Escavalier. Escavalier is a bug steel type similar to Scizor and Forretress, but unlike those two, it's always had troubles with viability. Escavalier has pretty great stats, high attack, good defenses, but very low speed. And that low speed makes it difficult to use in most singles contexts. It is lacking in recovery. It may have a great defensive typing, one of the best you can get, but it struggles to threaten things. It has limited utility. Forretress has all the utility in the world, and Scizor has healing, pivoting, priority, and better set of tools for conventional competitive play. But in 1v1, these very high defensive stats and a unique set of offensive tools that those other two Pokemon don't have make Escavalier a nice bug steel type option for 1v1. Escavalier has Stab Mega Horn, which is a much higher power bug type attack than any other similar Pokemon has, so its damage output is actually very impressive. The bulk alongside an Assault Vest also allows you to live plenty of incoming hits with great mixed bulk. And that works very well alongside the option of Metal Burst, which we already know Aggron took good advantage of, but Escavalier can do much the same thing. And Iron Head and Drill Run are good options to round out such a moveset. I've always been fond of this Pokemon and its visual design, so I think it's cool that there's somewhere its unique strengths compared to similar Pokemon are actually very useful and very strong. And finally, the Pokemon on the thumbnail, the Pokemon you probably came here to hear about. Hisuian Avalugg is actually viable in Gen 9 1v1, which is crazy, right? Hisuian Avalugg is an atrocious Pokemon all around. Hisuian Avalugg has an Ice Rock typing. I don't know if they can make a typing worse than that. It is weak to everything. Everything. Your time's 4 weak to Steel and Fighting. You're weak to Ground, Water, Grass, Rock. I might have an easier time listing what this isn't weak to. But much like Aggron, Avalugg Hisui has incredibly good stats on the physical side. 127 attack and 184 base defense. Very similar to Aggron stats, actually. And you have the ability Sturdy, allowing you to live any incoming hit on 1 if it were to one-hit KO. Unlike Aggron, Hisuian Avalugg has Ice Stab. The move Avalanche is great here. Power doubles if user is damaged by the target. The target is probably going to try and damage you, so this becomes a 120 power Ice type attack. That's really good, and you can afford to run a Choice Band here, of course. Earthquake is complementary to Ice coverage, hitting many things that Ice cannot. Stone Edge is stab boosted and can KO many things. And similar to the Metal Burst option on Aggron, Hisuian Avalugg has Mirror Coat, which will easily one-hit KO anything that clicks a special attack against you, because you are taking 1 million damage from special attacks. This guy has no special defense, but he survives on 1 HP with Sturdy. Mirror Coat reflects all that damage back times 2, easily KOing anything that would dare to touch Hisuian Avalugg on the special side. This helps round out the matchups that you can't defeat with your regular all attacks. So yet another horrendous Pokemon in normal contexts, operating pretty well in Gen 9 1v1. My overview of these 1v1 sets have been pretty basic, just explaining how they work in the simplest sense, but complexity in set building is actually one of the coolest parts of 1v1. You can imagine so, because the decision making in 1v1 is quite simple. You pick one Pokemon, and your game plan is probably very straightforward on that one Pokemon, but the intricacy of this format really shines in team building. 1v1 has some of the most complex EV spreads, counter sets, and ways to bait enemies than any other format I've experienced, and the highest level 1v1 players are masters of that kind of team building. 1v1 tournaments are also played in a best of 7 format, which makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? These are quick games with very simple decisions to be made that are over often in just a couple of turns, so having up to 7 games possible in a set makes perfect sense here. And 1v1 tournament matches can be very psychological, as both players attempt to bait and trick their opponent at every turn. This format is obviously not for everyone. It can feel like a bit of a guessing game, trying to pick the right Pokemon to bring, but the skill set for this format is very unique, and it's at least extremely fast-paced and fun to pick up and play here and there, even if you're not mainly playing this as a tournament format. If you want to approach Pokemon in a completely unique way, where the rules are thrown out the window, and concepts like clicking Hyper Beam and lowering the enemy's stats with a move like Eerie Impulse is a strong strategy. Maybe give 1v1 a go. Maybe you like it. Who knows? Thank you for watching, folks. What is your favorite 1v1 set? Mine is the Koala, of course. Let me know yours down below in the comments, and thank you for watching.